You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 6. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
In today's episode, we're defining mindfulness, and we're talking about how you can get started with your own mindfulness practice. We're also sharing a free guided mindfulness practice for adults, so you can get a hand with trying this out for the first time, or maybe if you're just getting started. All right, so let's get started with the show. So, Josiane, how would you define mindfulness?
So to me, mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment, to your world outside of you and your inner world, without judging what is going on. So whatever thoughts, emotions, or actions that are happening, just not judging and just observing what's happening. So that would be the definition that I would give it. How about you? What do you think?
Nice. So my definition would be pretty similar too, but because I have kind of this like science mind, I always love looking at it kind of like I'm studying what's really happening. So it's kind of like I'm trying to notice what my judgments or what my thoughts or perceptions are about a specific situation, and kind of taking a step back and deciding if that thought or judgment about something is serving me, is making me feel more joy or more love or more fun, or if it's kind of bringing me down. So I like to think of mindfulness as an opportunity to assess whether I'm okay with kind of these patterned thoughts and ways of being in the world are working for me. And it gives me a little bit of space to decide if I want to maybe change that. So, like, if there's a food that I don't like, do I really not like it, or have I just been saying I don't like it my whole life? Maybe I can try tasting that food as though it were my first time.
So you're questioning yourself.
Yeah, it's a lot of questioning. And the funny thing is sometimes you can almost over-question. Sometimes you have to be like, okay, I just need to live my life again. Like, stop analyzing everything. So I kind of go through cycles of really like having fun with the questioning. Is this situation serving me? Is this thing that I do as a habit serving me? And then sometimes just, enjoying and of course enjoying the moment too.
Yeah. And so that, like, it sounds simple, but it's so complicated to become an observer of the present moment. So could you tell me, like, what are the very beginnings of this practice? Like, how does somebody get into this when they know nothing?
So there's two sides to a mindfulness practice, and they kind of go in hand. They're an extension, one of the other. So the first practice is the formal mindfulness practice. So this would be when you're actually setting time aside to sit down and do a formal practice. So the second step would be the informal practice. So that's when you start taking what you've been learning from this formal practice and infusing it really naturally into your regular life. So getting started with a mindfulness practice can mean sitting down in a quiet place, closing the door, removing any distractions, so turning your phone off or putting it on airplane mode or on do not disturb, and just setting a time limit where during that time, you're just going to pay attention to your breath, which sounds super simple. But until
your
you
brain's
try it.
like, oh, squirrel. There's a squirrel.
Ooh, piece of candy.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What's going on over there? What's that sound?
Yeah, exactly. So, Josiane, do you remember in the beginning when you first started this practice of mindfulness and like actually sitting in complete silence?
Yes.
What happened?
And actually, it was so frustrating at the beginning. Like, I feel like, because at the start I was kind of on and off with it. Like, it wasn't like an everyday practice. And every time I did practice, I had way too high of expectations for myself. And then I would just get frustrated because I couldn't stop thinking. I could not stop. But actually, I listened to a podcast like a couple months into this, again, when I was still like on and off with it. And the lady in the podcast was talking about how, you know, she had the same frustration that I had. And the other person, the interviewer, was talking about maybe just instead of focusing on the breath, just sit there and watch your thoughts. Yeah. Like, I had to learn not to have an expectation. You can't be good at meditating or bad at it, right? At having the mindfulness practice.
We're so trained to think that we have to get good at any activity that we do, and that the goal of any activity is to like improve and be the best. So it's so opposite of everything else when you start doing a mindfulness practice and you're like, oh, I'm not trying to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I can't get good at this.
Yeah. My yoga teacher, when I did my teacher training, he wouldn't even call it a mindfulness practice or meditating or anything. He would just say, we're sitting. So every morning he would say, okay, we're sitting for half an hour. We're just sitting with our eyes closed.
Yeah.
That is all we're doing.
That's funny. That's actually... I've never heard you tell me that before, but that's how I introduced mindfulness in my classroom. I didn't tell them that we were meditating. I just said, we're going to sit in silence. And it was maybe 2 weeks in that I was like, hey, we've been meditating this whole time. They're like, what?
That's what meditating is?
Yeah.
People have this idea that it's like your hands are out and you're like,
Yeah. It's so funny because when you go and if you tell kids that, hey, we're going to meditate, a lot of them, at least someone in the group, is going to sit down cross-legged and touch their pointer finger and thumb together and go, and then giggle.
Also, why we don't refer to it as that when we go into schools, because it's got this weird like connotation attached to it that's not real, right? So.
Yeah. And it's fun to just go into it from a blank slate so that there's no attachment to any outcome, because it's like, oh, we're just sitting quietly for 2 minutes or 5 minutes. Like, there's no goal.
And I would have loved to know that from the beginning, because I would have saved myself all of that frustration.
Yeah.
But then with time, like, I started then just focusing or just paying attention to what was happening. So I would just let my brain go crazy and I would just watch it. But then with time, I just intuitively knew that I wanted to go back to just focusing on one thing, just practice more of the mindfulness meditation. And it was very hard at the beginning to actually just focus on my breath. But with time, with lots of time, I'm noticing more and more gaps between my thoughts now.
Yeah.
So, but some days are great. Some days my brain goes crazy. It just depends on the day, right?
Or you're like sitting there and then all of a sudden you realize that you're like, oh, I haven't had a thought in a while. Oh, interesting. I'm having a good meditation today. And you're like, wait, no, go back to the thoughts.
Yeah. But sometimes it's the opposite too. Like I've been thinking for 15 minutes and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I've been thinking for 15 minutes. Like, why did it take me 15 minutes to realize that I'm thinking?
Yeah. That's one reason that I really like when I've been taught to, especially in the beginning, to not just focus on your breath or focus on the feeling in your toes and working your way up to the feeling in your legs. Yeah. And instead, just straight up been told to watch my thoughts like I'm watching a movie. And to practice detaching from the thoughts and watching the thoughts like there's something happening totally external from you. And then that's when you can start to kind of study the thoughts and recognize like, my thoughts aren't that interesting. It's kind of like a loop of 4 things that just keeps going over and over and over, which is really just our brain that has a habit of thinking a specific thought. Yeah. So when we start noticing what those thoughts are, we can start maybe changing them or deciding if they're serving us or not. Kind of that mindfulness piece where we observe what we're thinking.
And now these days I catch myself thinking thoughts just in my day-to-day, not just in my mindfulness practice, right? Like I'll catch myself thinking about something that's totally useless or whatever. It's not serving me, but I can catch it more now, which I would have never even thought before about the fact that I was thinking. Does that make sense?
I was just going to say the same thing.
Thoughts flew through my head all the time, but I was not aware.
I thought that I was the thoughts. I didn't recognize that I was separate from the thoughts, that I could watch. I didn't understand that I could watch my thoughts. The thoughts carried me with them and they controlled me. And then when I started to have my formal seated mindfulness practice, that detachment from the thoughts was so whoa.
Yeah.
What? So in the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, he explains right at the beginning of the book, I would highly recommend it to anyone that's new to mindfulness, how it's like you have a roommate in your mind, and he asks you to just close your eyes and sit with your eyes closed and say in your mind, hello, and then say hello louder, and then scream hello in your mind. And you're like, oh, I can talk inside my head. That's neat. And then he asks you to notice that voice that's in your head, kind of like it were a roommate that never shuts up. And it says would you just sit next to this roommate and allow it to talk to you in the ways that it often talks to you, which for many of us, when we start to notice our thoughts, they tend to be quite negative.
Yes.
Usually negative towards ourselves mostly.
Yes.
And then negative towards others as well, and quite judgmental.
Yeah.
So that was huge for me. That was such a interesting life changer, eye opener to think of it that way. So in my seated meditation in the beginning, when I started to think of that, let's just sit and watch what my inner roommate has to say today and observe that. So Josiane, if you can sum this all up, we've had a long conversation about this now and gone in a lot of different directions, but if I were wanting to try mindfulness for the very first time, what would you recommend that I do?
I would tell you to find a nice, comfortable seat somewhere in your house that's quiet, and set a timer for 2 to 5 minutes, whatever you think will be an okay amount for you. Don't push it. Mm-hmm. And just close your eyes, have a straight back, and just watch your thoughts. Just observe.
Cool.
See what happens.
That's simple enough. Just 2 to 5 minutes of quiet time and just noticing what's happening in my mind. Very cool.
Yeah.
We also have a guided mindfulness practice for anyone that would prefer to try it out first, guided. So it'll walk you through this thing that we talked about watching your thoughts, about observing your thoughts. You can find it in the Balanced Educator free resources section. We'll link to it in the show notes. So we'll also link to the Untethered Soul book in the show notes as well. So you can find that at podcast.educalm. That's EDUCALME.com/TBE006. So TBE is for the Balanced Educator and 006 is this episode number. So now, Josiane, how would you bring this then into the informal practice? What would be a great place to start being mindful in your everyday life?
I like to tell people to start with food.
Yeah, that's a good place.
Because you have to eat, right?
Yeah.
First of all, it has to be a part of your day. Why not try to do it mindfully?
So how would I eat mindfully?
So if you're a coffee drinker, when you make your coffee, Smell the coffee beans before you grind them. Smell them again after you grind them. Once you make your coffee, smell it again and then taste it. Feel the heat in your hands as you're holding it. Just like really take in the moment of drinking your cup of coffee with your five senses.
That sounds amazing. I just got like excited for my cup of coffee tomorrow after you talking about that. That's great.
What would you say? Like,
that's a really good one. Okay, so I just had this flashback to when I first started practicing mindfulness. I started recognizing when my thoughts were wandering as I was driving. Just one day I was I was driving to work, and when I first left, it was wintertime and it was snowy, and I had this beautiful drive to work where all the trees were filled with snow. And I noticed that right at the beginning of my drive. And then I just got carried away with my thoughts. And then about halfway through my drive, I just had this feeling like, oh, I got carried away by my thoughts. Why don't I pay attention to how beautiful these trees are and really appreciate the beauty that's surrounding me? And how fun is this to drive to work? How gorgeous is this? How beautiful is nature? And then I kind of just went into this rampage of appreciation. And then that became my sort of informal practice. My driving time was my time to recognize when my thoughts were wandering.
And that can also be done just walking in nature, just to take in just nature around you with all of your five senses and just being in the moment, not thinking about later or earlier, right? Yeah.
I think any time that you would normally have quiet time, like any time that you wouldn't normally have distraction or, like TV on or music playing, like if you're showering, that's another really good time to just practice watching your thoughts and see if you can really pay attention to showering with all five senses.
Or when you're washing your dishes, like actually just wash your dishes. Do nothing else.
Yeah.
See what that's like.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting to see where your mind wanders to while you're doing just easy, simple tasks that are so habit and routine that you can do it without thinking.
So what changes do we see by doing this formal and informal practice? What changes happen in the human body?
So first thing is that when we're actually sitting down to be in the present moment and focus on the present moment, especially when we're focusing on our breath or on our body sensations, we're actually physically shifting our body into the rest and restore system, which is allowing us to make new cells, digest our food. It's allowing our immune system to fight off any attacks to keep us healthy. Basically, when we are in this calm state that we usually get from a mindfulness practice, it brings our body into a perfect position to be able to keep us healthy. When we think of other things, when we transport ourselves to other times and places, when our thoughts get away from us, our body actually thinks we're there. So if I'm thinking of if I'm showering and I'm thinking of what's coming up next on my to-do list and I'm getting stressed out about it, my body thinks I'm actually there. So my body's shifting into a stressed state. When I'm stressed, my body is too busy thinking about fight and flight, how I can be saved from this present danger, to be able to actually take care of what my body needs to take care of to stay healthy. So when I'm in the stress state, when I'm feeling feelings of stress, I'm not digesting my food. I'm not creating new healthy cells in a way that I can when I'm in the rest and restore. So you know how when you're really stressed, you usually get a sore stomach? It's because your body physically isn't digesting because it's busy worrying about, getting out of this immediate danger that might be looming around the corner, which in this day and age is like our pile of emails or something like that, which isn't a saber-toothed tiger like it was when we developed this system. But yeah, so that's why it's really good to start noticing where your thoughts are transporting you, because your body gets transported with your thoughts. And when we notice that we're getting, taken away by our thoughts, when we can create that space of awareness, then we can choose to be like, oh, I don't need to be worrying about what's happening a week from now. How about I enjoy this present moment with all my 5 senses? And you can actually feel your body shifting into that calm, rest and restore state. So there's lots of studies in science that have shown now, because this is a really hot topic in science to study, all the amazing benefits that having a mindfulness or meditation practice can do for you. But Josiane, I'd really love to know for yourself, what have you noticed since you started a mindfulness practice?
I've definitely, because I've realized what thoughts I'm having, I've definitely become a lot more self-aware, that's for sure. I'm so much more appreciative of the life that I have. Like everything I have, I notice it now, and I'm happier too because of that. And I think I became more compassionate as a teacher, as a friend, as a family member. I feel calmer. I feel like there's much less stress in my life, and I'm not as anxious as I used to be. Of course, we still all have our moments, of stress and anxiety, but it's much less. And when I do have it, I can manage it better now. Like I know what I need to do to return to a state of feeling calm and happy.
So you have like this toolkit of, first off, just noticing how you're feeling before it goes too far, and then being like, okay, here are strategies that I can use to get back to feeling good. Yeah.
And how about you? What have you noticed?
A lot of the same things. So I would repeat exactly what you just said. And also I would add on that I'm less reactive.
Yeah.
So I have this, it's like I've developed this space between something happening, and then I can see my thoughts judging the situation, and then I can be like, is that how I want to react? Or do I want to choose another path that's more loving or caring? Or it really helps me to give myself a breath between moments.
So that you can respond.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of reacting.
Yeah, responding mindfully, responding in a way that feels good. And I'm not perfect every time, but I also, too, if I'm not perfect, I have that self-reflection now where I go, I didn't act exactly how I wanted to. I'm going to apologize, or I'm going to, make a better choice next time.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to change this pattern that I seem to have created. So it's space. I feel like I have more space.
And this is something that we have noticed with the kids that practice mindfulness, that we teach mindfulness to. It's crazy the difference we see in these kids.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Because we talked for the last 20 or so minutes.
Yeah.
Next week, we are going to talk specifically about how we can apply this formal and informal mindfulness practice with kiddos.
Yeah, I'm so excited to dive into that. Thank you guys so much for sharing this time with us. Again, if you want to try out our guided mindfulness practice for free, or get any of the information, you can go to our show notes at podcast.educalm.com/TBE, as in the Balanced Educator 006. Excited to see you guys next week when we talk about how to practice mindfulness with kids.